Well, welcome to the city's advanced wastewater treatment plant. I'm Sid Fredrickson, the Wastewater Utility Superintendent for the city. The city's first plant was built over 75 years ago in 1939. It was the first treatment facility on the Spokane River and probably the first secondary treatment plant in the entire Northwest. In the last 33 years, the plant has undergone over $80 million of improvements. We are no longer a sewage treatment plant, but instead we are becoming an advanced water resource reclamation facility. Clean water resources are becoming scarcer and are a valuable commodity. Please join Steve Widmyer, our mayor, and me on a virtual tour of our facility. We'll meet up with the mayor in our state-of-the-art laboratory. Welcome,
Hi,
Mayor.
Sid. Thank you for having me here today.
You bet. Welcome to the laboratory of the city's advanced wastewater treatment plant.
You know, as we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the wastewater treatment plant, you look all the way back to the original building of this facility. How much did it cost originally to build way back when?
The original cost for the plant was a whopping $115,552 back in 1938-39.
So it cost that much to build way back when. How much would it cost to replace the whole entire facility today?
Today's replacement cost would be somewhere around $116 to $120 million if we were to start over again.
So Sid, primary treatment uses gravity to settle out the solids. What does secondary treatment involve?
Okay, secondary treatment involves the use of microorganisms, or plainly put, biology. We're using microorganisms to separate the solids that are dissolved and finely suspended that won't settle out by gravity. And let's step over here and we can show you some examples of that. So what we are looking at here is an example of what's known as a crawling ciliate. It's a single cell animal that is feasting on the sludge, part of what the artist out front on the sculptures calls the cleanup crew. So these microorganisms are very, very important in the treatment process. And this is just one example of many of them that exist in that aerated sludge that we'll see a little later on. So what we're looking at here is a stalk ciliate. And you'll notice up at the upper right that little critter is actually fastened onto a glop of sludge. You'll also notice that he moves, and he moves pretty fast. And if you look real closely, up close to the top end of him are a bunch of little cilia, almost like hairs that are churning the water and bringing food into its mouth, if you will. This is a single cell animal. So the creature that we're looking at here is known as a rotifer. This is a multi-celled animal. If you look real closely, you can actually see its digestive tract. The word means wheeled mouth. And so it has a bunch of hair-like cilia at its mouth that are whirling around, moving the food into its mouth and internal digestion system. Also part of that cleanup crew. So this is a multi-celled animal known as a bristle worm. And here again you can see its digestive tract working. Kind of disgusting, but the kids love it. So this is our before and after show and tell. This is what raw sewage looks like as it comes into the plant. No, there's no Baby Ruth candy bars floating. Sorry. It's pretty well munched up by the time it gets here. But raw sewage is 99.95% water. And a treatment plant spends all of this money and time to remove that 0.05% of solids. This is the treated effluent. This is what's going back in the river. And with the exception of higher phosphorus content than what's in the river, it's actually cleaner than normal river water. 95% plus removal. What we have here is an auto analyzer, kind of right out of CSI. We put in a rack of test tubes over here, and we automatically sample the contents of each test tube and it goes through a special chemical type of process, and it goes into 3 channels. One channel reads total phosphorus, one reads the biologically available phosphorus, the other one reads total nitrogen. So we're measuring nutrients. Nutrients are very important because they promote the growth of algae in our water bodies. So we don't want too much nutrients. This machine allows us to see down to 1 part per billion and actually measure around 10 parts per billion of phosphorus or total nitrogen. So when we were running our pilot operation, we were generating as many as 60 samples per day. So this was a very strong and good investment for the city. You too can have one for about $90,000. So now that we're going into real high levels of treatment, we're going to have to pay more attention, be more cognizant of the microorganism population. So we invested in this microscope. This is kind of a special one. You can look through it optically like a normal one, but it also has a video camera on top. So we can capture still photographs, or we can capture videos such as the microorganisms we viewed a little earlier. We are going to have to be very cognizant of what a healthy population of microorganisms looks like in our aeration basins.
So Sid, let's say that little Timmy flushes this down the toilet near his home near Shattuck Park. How long does it take to get from Shattuck Park down to the plant here?
That's kind of amazing. From that location, it takes about 6 hours.
6 hours?
Yeah, so by the time we see the peak flow from your showers in the morning, it isn't until about 11 a.m. Why don't we wander kind of over here and we'll talk a little bit about this collection system and this 210 miles of pipe that we have.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's stop here for a moment and take a look at this piece of equipment. What we have here is our TV van. We can go down to as small as 6-inch lines and as large as our biggest is a 36-inch diameter line. And we can upload all of that to a server at City Hall.
So you take video inside pipes?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we make dirty pictures. We don't make pornographic ones, but we make dirty ones.
So Sid, what are those green things on the roof there?
Well, those green things we call cupolas, they don't do anything. They just look good. That's part of the architectural features that we've designed into the plant so that we don't look like a tank farm.
The ambiance of the wastewater treatment plant.
Correct. We also covered these for odor control as well.
So, Sid, what building do we have here?
Well, this is our screenings room. This is where we remove the stuff that shouldn't ought to be there to begin with. Rags, bottles, rocks, boards, whatever.
What's the most interesting thing you found in the screening room?
Well, you know, I really can't tell you that because none of us stand around and watch that stuff come in. Okay, what we're looking at here is a capture of one of our control screens. It's what we call a SCADA screen, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. If you look at this kind of purple line here, this shows what the flow of the plant is going out into the river. And you notice that it tapers off and the low flow is less than 2 million gallons per day at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And then it starts to peak at about between 10 and 11 a.m. So right now we're a little over 5 million gallons a day, and our average is about 3.8 million gallons per day. We also have a series of different screens that we can access. I can go in and look at our influent pump station and look at our screenings room. Shows our bar screens that are cleaning the stuff that should not to be there. Also shows our influent pump station, and you'll notice that one of them is lit up green. That's the only one that is running at the current time. Eventually we will have this whole plant set up to where we can operate it on a smartphone or an iPad. This shows our primary clarifiers. Both of them are in green and running, and our scum pits are not running at the present time. And we can also go in and take a look at our biogas control building, and shows how much methane gas is being generated by our anaerobic digesters. Plus our odor control beds shows all of our odor control fans that are running. We have 2 in standby, and those are for the primary clarifiers. They only come on when we have to send somebody inside. Okay, what we're looking at here is our 2 boilers that have the ability to be fired off from digester gas, or what we call biogas. You'll notice that the orange light's on this boiler. That means it's being fired with biogas from our digesters to heat the hot water necessary to keep the contents at 100 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. And of course, you see all of the auxiliary piping system, the hot water supply going out to the 9 buildings, and the hot water return lines. What we have over here is a control panel for our rotary screen thickeners that are upstairs on the mezzanine deck. We feed the secondary sludge from the secondary clarifiers up to these rotary thickeners, and then from there it goes into our digesters for digestion over a 21-day period.
So Sid, where are we at now in the plant?
Well, we're at our solids processing building. This facility here is where we dewater the sludge, and we also harvest excess methane and burn it off at our flare over here.
Where do the solids go?
We haul those up to our compost facility up on Julia Street behind Lowe's Hardware, where we make compost we sell to nurseries and landscapers. And the methane, we take that and we use that to fire our boilers to generate heat. We can heat as many as 9 buildings in the wintertime with that methane. Saves the city $470 a day in natural gas costs.
So you're reusing the methane and reusing the solids.
We recycle everything here.
Great.
Up until the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972, only primary treatment was required of any treatment plant in the United States. So in other words, what you're looking at here coming off the primary clarifiers, that's as good as it got. It would be disinfected and turned loose in our rivers, lakes, and streams. That was it, except for Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene built this plant as a secondary plant in 1939, 33 years before it was required to.
So how many gallons are processed here every day?
Well, right now we're flowing at about 3.8 million gallons per day. We have a treatment capacity of about 6 million gallons per day. Now that may sound big, but it isn't in comparison. If you look at City of Spokane, 39 million gallons per day, or the Hypermium plant in Los Angeles, 500 million gallons per day, or all of the treatment plants for New York City, 1.5 billion gallons per day. Okay, I'm standing in front of our low phosphorus pilot study building that we built here a few years ago. We operated it in 2010, 2011, and the purpose of this was to take a look at 3 advanced 3rd stage treatment processes, or tertiary processes as we call them. So we have 2 membrane technologies and 1 sand filter technology. The goal here is to see how low we could get on phosphorus removal. And we were quite surprised to see that we could get down to less than 50 parts per billion. And that's below our current level of about 800 parts per billion. So by utilizing this for a year and a half of study, we were able to determine which technology we wanted to build at full scale. And what I'm holding here in my hand are examples of membrane technology. They look like small strands of spaghetti, but they're actually hollow core straws. And we hook them up to a manifold at the top and bottom and put suction on it so that we're actually drawing the water right through the wall of the membrane. And as we add chemical, we're removing the phosphorus in the form of insoluble aluminum phosphate, which settles out as a fine particle. So these filters actually remove that phosphorus. And this unit right here behind me over my right shoulder is the one that we are going to be building at full scale. The unit behind me on my left shoulder is an ultraviolet disinfection unit that we're going to salvage and use to generate water for irrigation purposes in the future.
Well, we have a couple of interesting looking structures here. What do we have?
Well, these 2 towers are called trickling filters. And what they really are biological reactors. This is where our microorganism population grows that will help remove the dissolved solids and the real finely suspended solids. In other words, it takes that primary effluent and it cleans it up.
So how long does it take a water drop to go through the system?
These are very incredibly fast reactors. A water drop goes in through there in about 10 minutes. Okay, I'm standing in front of our trickling filters, and if we go up on top, we would see a black plastic media that looks like corrugated roofing. And what we're doing is we're providing a huge surface area for our microorganisms to grow on, or as we call it, biota. So how much do we got? We estimate that each of these trickling filters has 250 tons of biological growth. So as we spray that effluent coming off the primary clarifiers over the top, those microorganisms are chomping down and eating the dissolved and the finely suspended solids.
So Sid, there are some things that don't smell really good here. You refer to it as foul air. What do you do with the foul air?
Well, we collect it and then we treat it. We pass half of the foul air through each of the 2 trickling filters that we looked at, and then from there it comes over into these 2 compost bed biofilters. And there's a series of perforated pipes that go underneath this. So again, we're using biology to clean up the smells. If those daggone bacteria have to make it stink, they ought to be responsible to clean it up.
Sounds good. So Sid, this is not normal water. What would happen if, say, a duck flew by and decided it wanted to land on the top of this?
Well, we're adding so much air into this water that it has decreased its buoyant force. Translation, you're going to sink. And so is that village idiot duck if he lands on it. And it happens occasionally. So these are our secondary clarifiers. We've seen how we use the microorganisms to remove the solids. Well, these clarifiers are how we trap or collect the bodies of the microorganisms. And you can see that as it flows up inside here, by the time it gets to the outer ring, the solids are settling out very rapidly and it's becoming very clear. And that's what we want it to do. Hence the word clarifier.
So this, Sid, is where you inject chlorine into the system. What does chlorine actually do?
Well, actually, it kills the pathogen or disease-causing microorganisms. Bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and fungus.
How long does it take chlorine to disinfect the effluent?
It takes a minimum of 30 minutes, and that's what you're looking at here is a series of 4 channels. Comes in the first channel, around the corner, down the second channel, around the corner, down the third channel, around the corner, down the fourth channel. And just before it heads to the river, because excess chlorine is toxic to aquatic life in the river, we neutralize the chlorine using sulfur dioxide. A little extra sulfur dioxide doesn't kill anything in the river. Let's take a quick look at our fish pond over here. We have goldfish and koi. We built the pond fairly deep here a few years ago because we had river otter and also great blue heron that were feeding on our fish. If you look real close, I think you'll see a few of them maybe floating around down in the bottom.
And this water that's trickling in from here comes from where, Sid?
This is all treated effluent. This is what we put back into the river.
So you treat the water, it comes down in here, and this is the water that fills your pond?
Yes.
So Sid, we've all heard about the low volume toilets that they have now. How does that low volume toilets, how does that affect the process that you're doing here?
It affects it greatly. In 1981, on average, each person contributed 120 gallons per day to the sewer system. Today, because of water conservation measures, we're down to 74 gallons per day. So where in 1981 we were predicting that we were going to have a plant flow of 6 million gallons a day by 2001, we're now predicting that that won't happen for another 15 years plus. So it increases the concentration of the solids coming into the plant, So we have to be careful of that in our treatment processes, but overall, that's a good thing.
So the low volume toilets helps the process.
It does.
Great.
So what we have here is a sample of Coeur de Green compost. This is the end product of mixing our biosolids with wood chips and going through a biological process over a period of 51 days. This is all ready for marketing. It's been screened and cured, and it has unrestricted use for horticultural application. Translation, there ain't no bugs in there that's going to kill you.
Well, thank you very much, Sid. It's been a great educational process. I think what you do here at the plant is a necessary and important thing to the city of Coeur d'Alene. And thank you for everything that you do and that your staff do here at the plant.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and it's a pleasure to have you come down and visit us. Because we don't make roses.